The cafe was full that afternoon, the particular crowded of a Saturday when everyone in town had decided lunch outside was the correct decision. Grace Whitfield stood near the entrance on her crutches, scanning the room for an open table and finding none. She had been doing this walk, the careful, deliberate walk her prosthetic still required after 8 months, for long enough that she had learned to ignore the looks, mostly. Some days were easier than others. This was not an easier day. Her arm braces were new, added 3 weeks ago after a fall had aggravated an old wrist injury, and the combination of crutches and braces and prosthetic made her slower than usual, more visible than usual, more aware than usual of every eye that found her and looked away too quickly. She saw one table with space, a man with 2 young children, a toddler on his lap, and a boy of about 7 across from him, an empty bench beside the boy. She made her way over. It took longer than it should have. She felt the walk being watched the way she always felt it, that particular awareness that came from years of public movement in a body people weren't used to seeing move this way. "Can I sit here?" she asked. "Everywhere else is full?" Jack Donnelly looked up. He was 38, gray buttoned down, the specific tiredness of a single father managing 2 children through a Saturday outing that had already involved one minor crisis about which juice box was acceptable. His daughter Pearl, 2 years old, was investigating his shirt collar with the focused interest of toddlers everywhere. His son, Theo, 7, was watching the woman with crutches with the open, unfiltered curiosity that children have before they learn to look away. "Of course," Jack said. "Theo, scoot in." Theo scooted. Grace lowered herself carefully onto the bench, propping her crutches against the wall. And there was a moment, the particular moment that happened often, that she had learned to anticipate and brace for, where Theo's eyes went to her prosthetic leg and stayed there. She waited for the question. Children asked. She had made peace with that mostly. It was the adults who pretended not to notice, while clearly noticing that she found harder. "What happened to your leg?" Theo asked. "Theo," Jack said. "It's fine," Grace said. She looked at Theo directly. "Car accident 2 years ago. They couldn't save it." "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore. Took a while to get here, though." Theo considered this with the serious attention children give important information. "Can you still run?" "Getting there," Grace said. "I'm better at walking right now." Theo nodded, satisfied, and returned to his sandwich. Jack looked at Grace with something that wasn't pity. She checked for that automatically, the way she checked for it in everyone, but was instead just attention. Ordinary attention, the kind people gave each other before deciding what kind of person they were dealing with. "Sorry about him," Jack said. "He asks everyone everything." "I'd rather he ask than stare and say nothing," Grace said. "Most kids do the second thing. The parents usually do too." Pearl had transferred her attention from Jack's collar to Grace, studying her with the particular intensity of a 2-year-old encountering something new. "Leg," Pearl announced, pointing. "That's right," Grace said. "It's a robot leg." Pearl's eyes widened with the specific delight of toddlers learning new categories of things. "Robot." "Sort of like one. It helps me walk." Pearl reached toward it experimentally. Jack caught her hand gently. "You don't have to," he said to Grace. "If she's bothering you." "She's not," Grace said, and meant it. There was something uncomplicated about Pearl's curiosity, the way there was something uncomplicated about Theo's directness. No performance of either fascination or discomfort, just 2 children encountering a fact about the world and processing it accordingly. It was, Grace thought, considerably easier than the careful, averted eyes of most adults in the cafe right now, several of whom she could feel monitoring the table without looking at it directly. "You ordering?" Jack asked. "I can flag the server." "I will, thanks." Grace looked at the menu. "It's slower for me to get up again, so I appreciate it." Jack flagged the server. Grace ordered. The conversation continued in the unhurried way conversations do between strangers who have decided, without discussing it, that they don't mind continuing to be strangers who talk. She learned that Jack was a single father, Divorced 2 years ago, his wife had moved across the country for work neither of them had wanted to fight about, given how the marriage had been going regardless. And he had primary custody, which suited everyone including, eventually, his ex-wife, who visited several times a year and called every week. He learned that Grace had been an avid runner before the accident, a drunk driver, a highway, a recovery that had taken the better part of 2 years and was still, in the specific ways that recoveries are, ongoing. She worked as a physical therapist now, which she had moved toward during her own recovery, because she had wanted to be the kind of help she had needed. "That must be strange," Jack said, "treating people for the thing you went through." "It's the opposite of strange," Grace said. "It's the first job that's made complete sense to me. I know exactly what the fear feels like. I know what it feels like when someone tells you that you'll walk again and you don't believe them." She paused. "I can be the person who believes it convincingly because I lived it." Jack looked at her properly then. "That's a good reason to do anything," he said. Theo had finished his sandwich and was now looking at Grace's prosthetic leg with renewed interest. "Can I touch it?" he asked. "Theo," Jack said again, with the specific exhaustion of a parent managing a child's curiosity in public for the second time in 10 minutes. "It's okay," Grace said. She extended the leg slightly. "Go ahead." Theo touched the carbon fiber carefully, the way he might touch something he'd been told was breakable and was discovering wasn't. "It's hard," he said. "It has to be. It does a lot of work." "Does it come off?" "At night, yes." "What does your actual leg look like under it?" "Theo," Jack said, "that might be a personal question." "It's fine," Grace said. She looked at Theo. "It stops below my knee. There's a part of my leg there and then there isn't anymore. The prosthetic attaches to what's left." Theo absorbed this information with the same serious attention he gave everything. "That's really cool, actually," he said. Grace looked at him. Something in her chest did something unexpected. "Thank you," she said. "Most people don't say that." "Why not? It's like you have a superhero leg." Jack laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him. And Pearl, not understanding the joke but responding to the laughter, laughed too, the uncomplicated laugh of a toddler joining an atmosphere she liked. Grace found herself laughing as well, the first easy laugh she'd had in a public space in longer than she wanted to count. "Can I ask you something?" Jack said, once the children had returned to their food and the table had settled back into its rhythm. "Sure. When you walked in, looking for a seat, how many tables looked away before you got here?" Grace looked at him. The question was direct in a way most people's questions weren't. Most people asked around things, circled the actual question with several layers of softer ones first. Jack had just asked it. "All of them," she said, "except yours." "Why ours?" Theo was already looking at me, not away, at me. It seemed like the safer table. She paused. "Turned out to be right." Jack was quiet for a moment. "I want to tell you something," he said, "and I don't want it to be a whole thing. I just want to say it." "Okay. You sitting down at this table is the best part of a fairly difficult Saturday." He glanced at Pearl, who had managed to get yogurt on her own forehead through a process Jack hadn't fully witnessed. "These two have been a lot today. You being here, the way Theo's been talking to you. It's been the easiest 20 minutes I've had since this morning." Grace felt something tighten in her throat that she hadn't expected. "That's a nice thing to say," she said. "It's just true," Jack said. "I'm not great at saying things that aren't." They stayed at the table long after the food was finished, in the way that happens when a conversation generates its own momentum and nobody wants to be the one to end it. Pearl fell asleep against Jack's shoulder. Theo asked Grace 11 more questions about the prosthetic, running, and whether superheroes were real, in roughly that order of importance to him. When Grace finally gathered her crutches to leave, Theo looked genuinely disappointed. "Are you coming back?" he asked. Grace looked at Jack. Jack looked back with an expression that suggested he was hoping for the same answer Theo was asking for, phrased with slightly more restraint. "I come here most Saturdays," Grace said, "now that I know the seating situation works out." "Good," Theo said, with the simple satisfaction of a child whose question had been answered correctly. "You can sit with us again." I'd like that, Grace said. She meant it more than the sentence let on. She came back the following Saturday. The table had space waiting before she even asked. Some kindnesses are loud and dramatic. Some are simply a 7-year-old who looks instead of looking away, and a father who says of course without hesitation, and a toddler who calls a prosthetic leg a superhero accessory and means it as the highest compliment she knows how to give. Grace had spent 2 years learning to walk through rooms that braced themselves when she entered. She had not expected the easiest room to be a cafe table with 2 kids and a tired single father who had simply said, "Of course, scoot in, there's room." Sometimes that's all it takes. Just room, genuinely made, without a second thought. The end.